Hello, ladies and gentle friends. This is Chris, aka Chris the Ninja, and today I am going to be taking a look at The Hate You Give. So I do want to thank you for tuning in, if you are listening to me, and do want to remind you, if you would be so kind, to check out my blog as well. The link for that website wise is going to be down below in the description. But anyway, yes, going to be taking a look at The Hate You Give. I had an opportunity to check the movie out last night with a good friend of mine, and we both came out of it and were kind of stuck a little bit. A little lost for words. The movie itself is definitely emotionally charged, very, very emotionally charged. And it is, of course, very relevant to what is going on in our world today. From a socioeconomic standpoint, political climate that we're looking at in our world today, it definitely had a lot of ammo material, I guess you could say, to pull from, to bring that to the big screen, to take those elements and incorporate them thematically into a movie. Like our society right now is ripe, for a movie like this. And, like I said, came out of it, it was a little bit difficult to put everything into words, because it is a very good movie, but at the same time, it doesn't make you necessarily feel so good, if you know what I mean, because there's a lot of different things that it tackles, a lot of hard truths it takes a look at, and sometimes that is not easy to just be excited about, or just get into a full-on discussion about. But anyway, I want to just take a look at it today, do a little bit of a rundown, what was going on with the movie, things that I liked, some things that I maybe think didn't necessarily work that well. So I'm going to start that here first with a little bit of background. So the movie itself is actually based on a novel of the same name, The Hate You Give, that was written by Angie Thomas, I believe it is. Let me double check that, make sure. Yes, Angie Thomas. See, I knew. I need to be just confident in what I'm saying. So it was originally a novel that was written by Angie Thomas that came out in 2017, so it came out last year. And the book itself was based on, I believe, a short story that she wrote after an unfortunate police shooting of an unarmed black man. So that's was the original spark. She did this short story first, and then came the actual novel for this. So this is a fictional account, but it might as well have been a documentary. You know what I mean, as far as how deep and real that it gets. It's a fictionalized account, but it's definitely, kind of a slice of life story of things that are going on in the world today. It's directed by, and by the way, Angie Thomas. So I'm expecting, when I heard, that this was based on the book, I don't know why I was expecting, just kind of this older woman, who wrote the book and wants to, she wrote it because she wanted her kid, to write. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying. Write it because she wanted, her kids to be safe. Didn't want to have them grow up in a world like this, or something like that, right? Turns out the Angie is only about 29, 30 years old. So like in the same age as me. So, a young woman that's really writing about this stuff. And I thought that was great. Not to say that if she was older, like, it's less great, but it just kind of puts it in perspective. You know what I mean? That this is, when you look at it, for somebody like me, for somebody that's in the same age bracket, and it's like this is the storytelling ability that they have, and they have this kind of boldness and courage to put together this project, put it out, and then it becomes successful. It was a very successful best-selling book, and that's how it got adapted to be on the silver screen here. So, originally novel by Angie Smith, is directed here by George Tillman Jr., who many of you may not know by name, but he has actually directed a number of notable films here, especially black films. I mean, like, they're good movies, but they're definitely movies that the black community would recognize as being black films. He directed Soul Food, the movie. The original movie that, of course, had like a spin-off series and, all that good stuff. Directed Soul Food, directed the first two Barbershop movies. And that, of course, spawned, had its own franchise, spin-off, another, sequel, and all that good stuff. Directed Roll Bounce, Notorious, the Biggie Smalls movie, and directed a little movie called Faster, which, up until, I want to say until Fast 5 came out, was, in my opinion, the best movie starring The Rock. Dwayne The Rock Johnson was Faster. It's like a little action revenge flick, and I thought it was pretty. I thought The Rock is really good in that movie. So he has done a number of things. He's kind of been a steady presence here in Hollywood. Nothing that you could probably qualify as being, just like a mega hit. No billion-dollar movies or anything like that. Not really an A-list director. But he definitely has a steady hand and a good eye as far as his, directing style. And I think he was a good choice for this movie. Starring in the movie as Star Carter is Amanda Stenberg, and I actually looked it up and saw, which a lot of people may know as Rue. She was Rue in the Hunger Games movies. And I actually read up that her name, I guess in two South African languages, means power. And I thought that was pretty cool. She is great in this movie. A lot of what happens centers around her, and a good deal of the movie's weight rests squarely on her shoulders. And that's not to say that anybody else, in the cast doesn't do a great job, because I thought for the majority of the movie, most of the cast, pretty much everybody does well. Pretty much everybody gives a great performance. They, you can tell that they tackled the material seriously, and that they were, committed into what was going on. So I thought everybody all around, the acting was pretty good. But Star, essentially, she is the catalyst. You know what I mean? Like, it's her call to action, so to speak, like within herself, after what happens, and we'll get to that. There are spoilers here. So after what happens, it's her motivations and actions that are driving the story. And so for her to be portraying this 16-year-old kid that is trying to make a difference, trying to overcome a whirlwind of challenges, because it's not just one thing, you know what I mean? She has a lot of things that are kind of working against her in this movie. So I thought she brought a great presence to the character. She did great acting wise. There's plenty of times when it calls for her to kind of cry almost on cue. I mean, she does great with that. So, I mean, she was great. She was great. And, everybody was pretty great. I mean, you got a really good cast here. So you had Regina Hall, Algie Smith, Saginaw's own Algie Smith, and Anthony Mackie, Russell Hornsby, Common. So, I mean, there's, like I said, pretty much everybody filled their roles with life, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't just feel like movie characters, like these felt like people, you know, that you were watching. And that's for a story like this that really looks to hit home, you know, with a real message. That's always great when you can have characters feel like real people like that. So anyway, the story itself takes place in the fictional, like the fictional city here of Garden Heights, which pretty much could be subbed for any major African American hub community. I believe Angie Thomas, the author, I believe she said that she did base her like painting of Garden Heights as a community basically on Inglewood and Compton. I mean, but like I said, you could pretty much sub it out for any predominantly African American black kind of community. So whether it be Detroit, Cleveland, you know what I mean, like the Comptons, you know, something like that. So and the story itself would feel real. So the fact that it's fictional doesn't make it any less real here. But yeah, so it takes place in Garden Heights. And so Star and her family currently live in Garden Heights, but her mom and dad have set it up for her and her little brother and her half brother, 7, for them to go to basically like a prestigious, you know what I mean, suburban school. And Star herself, you know, she feels a little torn because she, you know what I mean, it's like when she goes to that school, she feels like she can't be too black, you know what I mean, and then she comes home and it's like she can't bring the school home with her, like the person that she is at school, she can't bring that home because it's not black enough, right? So she's kind of torn in between that. And she ends up going to this party, seeing a friend of hers named Khalil, who they grew up together actually. And so she, you know, they end up bumping to each other. They haven't seen each other in a while. The party gets shot up, right? And Khalil ends up, like, they run out to Khalil's car, and he ends up, you know, he's going to give her a ride home, whatever. So they go, and, you know, they kind of have this touching, tender moment, reminiscing about when they were kids and things like that. And, oh yeah, and before that, so it's been established that Khalil, you know, and it's basically set up that he's dealing drugs now. Which I knew was going to be the setup. Like, as soon as I saw him wearing a pair of Balenciaga sneakers, I'm like, he's going to be a drug dealer. Of course, they're going to go with that angle. But anyway, it comes out that he's, you know, been selling drugs, but, you know, he himself is in a difficult spot because he's from Garden Heights as well. He has a family situation to where there's not many options around, you know, as far as getting jobs, and you know, there's, you know, parental figures in his life, like there's the layoffs there, so they're scrambling for money, what to do. So drugs is, I mean, not to, you know, justify selling drugs or anything like that, but when you're in that situation and there is, you know, kind of this opportunity that you see as possibly being a way out to get get your family into a better life, better situation, you're gonna take it, man. Like, I mean, 9 times out of 10. Again, like I said, I'm not trying to justify it, but that's one of the things that the movie tackles, you know what I mean? Like that, and, you know, being a product of your environment, and, you know, there's only so much that you can do as far as the pressures and everything that are going on in your neighborhood, and you have those people that they just feel like there is no other option. So anyway, That's what he does. He sells drugs. So yeah, so they go have this tender moment in the car, and then, you know, he gives her a kiss. She's like, I got a boyfriend, and all this stuff, and he pulls out one of the smoothest lines of all time, which is, I'll let you see the movie, see what happens with that. Anyway, because they stopped for that moment to reminisce, he starts the car up again, goes to drive her, take her home. Cop pulls them over, and, you know, is completely unclear about why he's pulled them over, and then, you know, goes to pulls him out, tells him to come out of the car, goes to run his license, registration, all that. And Khalil and Star are just talking. He goes to reach in to just grab a hairbrush. Cop thinks it's a gun, shoots him, right? And he dies there in basically right next to Star. And yeah, and that is really what sets the story in motion. So she becomes kind of torn on whether to bring the awareness to the situation of what's going on with what happened with Khalil, like the officer that did, you know, shoot and kill him, that murdered him, really for no reason. So she's torn between shedding the light on that, speaking the truth on that, because the added layer to it, of course, with Khalil being a drug dealer, he was working for so Anthony Mackie's character, who is like the big neighborhood drug dealer named King. He was working for King, so it gets to a point to where, you know what I mean, like she wants to be the voice to illuminate, you know, and shed light on this horrible injustice that's taking place. And at the same time, like, she's being threatened by King, where it's like, you can't go public with this, because, you know what I mean, if she goes public with it, and then it's going to come out, like, yeah, not only was he selling drugs, he was selling drugs for the biggest drug lord in town, like, you know what I mean? So he kind of tries to get her to be quiet about it, basically saying, like, it's, you know, it's terrible what happened to him, but let it go, you know what I mean? Like, don't make this a thing. And, you know, she's kind of torn on what to do about that. Plus, there's the whole thing. I mean, like I said, the movie tackles so much. There's the whole, you know, situation, looking at it from the other standpoint, where the cops are in a position where, you know, they can paint the picture that, you know, Khalil was a drug dealer and he deserved to die anyway. You know what I mean? And it's a huge chunk of the movie just kind of deals with that, her having that back and forth with herself. And not only that, I mean, just the trauma of seeing, like, one of your best friends, you know, somebody you grew up with, just seeing them die in front of you. And then it eventually comes out that this is, growing up, she had another best friend. So it was Khalil, and there was also oh my gosh, what was there's also another little girl that she grew up with. Like, they were all best friends together, the three of them, and she got killed. Star watches her get shot and killed, and ended up not saying anything, because it was one of King's, they call them King's Lords, the gang that King runs. So it was one of the King Lords that kills her. So she ends up being silent about that, you know, for fear of retaliation and things like that. So like I said, man, I mean, it's a lot of stuff that was going on in it. She eventually does find the courage to speak out, speak up. That not only puts a bullseye on her back from King, it also I mean, like, it also just, it puts the spotlight on her, you know, in a way that she didn't know she was ready to kind of accept it. And she's, you know, kind of trying to keep, because when she does eventually go public with it, and she does like an interview on the nightly news, she has it so that her face is blurred, but people are starting to put two and two together, you know, by the way that she's been acting and the way that she's been conducting herself and just trying to deal with the situation. And I mean, like I said, man, and then it goes through, you know, the heartbreaking moment. There's like near the end of the movie, like when there's a protest, because she finds out that even after agreeing to go on the news and agreeing to like testify for a grand jury, that the case ends up not even going to trial. Like the cop gets off, which, you know, of course we've seen that many times in real life. So there's that kind of heartbreaking moment, and she ends up, you know, becoming the voice of like this protest that eventually turns into a riot. It takes a violent turn, and yeah, man, like there are so many different things that were going on in this movie. And it's interesting to me that it was, I haven't read the book, so I mean, I'm sorry to say that. I've never been much of a book reader. I like to read, but not books so much. So I haven't read the book, you know, to kind of see like how faithful an adaptation it is. But to me, I think the movie's greatest strength is the fact that it is able to incorporate so many different messages. I mean, because there's, you know, not only the main thing, you know, the main thread line through the movie about police brutality. I mean, but you also have, you know, kind of just the criminality of black people. Like there's a great part where Common and Star are having a conversation, and, you know, she gets him to realize like how ridiculous he sounds. You know, the fact that he would treat a black suspect different than a white suspect. And there's the whole thing where, you know, Star goes to this predominantly white school, and her friends, I mean, you know, she has friends that don't really get it, you know what I mean, and what it's like to kind of be friends with people that don't get it, because that's a real thing, you know what I mean, and I can speak to that myself as a black person, as a black man that does have white friends. There are some that don't get it, you know what I mean, and it's because they've never had to experience it, or they've never seen, you know, different things happen to people. And you know, it's just a different, it's just different living the experience, you know what I mean, living the black experience. And that's not to say that you have to live the black experience to understand some of these things. It's just saying it's easier if you have, I think. But it tackles that. It tackles, you know, just kind of like the gang mentality, you know, that some people have, and how they're so willing to cling to that they'll let it destroy like everything around them. And I mean, like I said, man, it's a lot of stuff that's going on here. I think that the main message, I think the hard hitting message of the movie, like I said, again, talking about the police brutality and how we need people to speak up for that. You know what I mean? The dead can't speak for themselves. So if there's a situation where these things happen, like they need people to be the voice behind that. Like they need people to spark that movement, and it hurts sometimes, you know what I mean, because you have time and time again we've seen unarmed black men be killed, and people have had protests, they've had you know, these movements, Black Lives Matter gets involved, like all these different things, and yet it still keeps on happening. So, you know, stuff like that kind of hurts, but you still have to try to make a difference, try to make a change, and just do what you can to try to make things better. And, you know, like I said, as far as delivering that message, fantastic. The movie also has some very nice added moments of levity, which I think it needs, you know, because it spends probably a good 95% of the time being heavy, you know what I mean? So it does kind of need those lighter moments to break it up, and I think it has that. I think there were a couple of points in the movie where some of the messages were a little too, like, it's a little too black and white, figuratively speaking. But yeah, I mean, like, it's a little too, it's like, all right, we get it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's, like, oh man, like, there's a, like, there's a part where they're trying to show, like, that her boyfriend, because Star's boyfriend is a white guy, and there's a part they're trying to show that he's kind of like, you know, with the stereotype that he can't dance and stuff, and it goes. It works, and I think it, you know, again, it's kind of one of those added moments of levity, but it's also like, all right, we get it. You're trying to say this white dude can't dance. We get it, man. Yeah, like, I think there were a couple of points like that. They were kind of on the nose, but for the most part, like I said, it definitely tackles a lot of things as far as racial interactions, things that we need to get better, things within the black community that we need to work on and get better. Like, it tackles that as well. And then, you know, it also looks at, you know, this little girl who is, you know, who is of two different worlds and trying to, you know, be accepted in both, and how she kind of comes to rectify the differences from each of her world, bring it together, and be, you know, kind of the best version of herself, like the version of herself that she wants to be, you know what I mean, where she doesn't feel like she's pretending to be somebody she's not at any point. And so, I mean, it's got that in it. Like I said, it's got a great message, layers up under that. It's very layered storytelling, layers up under that, of a father who himself, you know, their father, Maverick Carter, which is hilarious, because I was thinking that's Maverick Carter's a businessman who's one of LeBron James's boys, who helped get all his big business deals and stuff on the table. So I just kept thinking of that. But yeah, but Maverick Carter, their father, who himself is a reformed king lord, you know, criminal and gang member and all of that, and how he has tried to better himself and make it so that because he ended up in jail with his dad, how the kind of repeated cycle of criminality doesn't continue in their family. Like, he has made it a point to not let his children go down the same path. Like, it takes a look at that. And I don't know, man, like, if you wanted me to sit down and just break down everything from this movie, I'd probably be here for hours and hours. So I'm going to stop here and just say, go see it. Definitely go check it out. I would say, if you have an opportunity, if you do have kids, definitely take your kids. Like, this is a movie I think everybody needs to see. White, black, green, purple, whatever. Like, I think you should go see this movie. Take a moment, absorb the messages, digest them, start some dialogues. You know, even if not face to face, get on the internet, talk about it. And it's a shame it doesn't look like the movie's doing so great financially, but it has been reviewed very well. So yeah, I think you guys should definitely check it out whenever you have the opportunity to. And I think I don't know if I'll say it's hard. It's a hard movie to kind of try to enjoy, quote unquote, because of everything that's going on with it. It does have a lot of emotional weight to it, but it's a good movie, and I definitely think everybody should check it out. And I appreciate you guys checking out the show, and I'll be back again with another episode later on. So I hope you guys just take care out there, and I will see you later. You take care.